Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please stand for the national anthems of Dominica and the United States of America. Thank you all. Please be seated. Well, finally, let me now officially welcome everyone to the Ross University School of Medicine White Coat Ceremony for the September semester of the class of 2021. Welcome, everybody. I'd just like to start by thanking some individuals for their attendance. Dean and Chancellor, Dr. William Owen, keynote speaker, Dr. K. Andrew Crichton, Vice Dean, Mr. Peter Getz, members of our accrediting body, the Dominica Medical Board, Drs. David Johnson and Dorian Shillingford, two very valued and appreciated members of the GNV Excellent team, Irma Marletta and Giuseppe Davino. Actually, I think you should stand because the partnership the efforts that the boat team have put into our experience has matched our own, and it's been a pleasure to interface with that team, and we wish you luck as you head back to your home today. Yes, they're going. I'd like also to welcome, of course, faculty and staff of Ross University, families and friends who are celebrating here with us this morning in St. Kitts, as well as everyone who will be watching the online recording of this ceremony later today on our RUSM YouTube channel. And as the Senior Associate Dean for the floating Basic Science campus of Ross University School of Medicine, I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of our students. Now, students, each of you will have noticed the gift box that was waiting for you when you came into the room today. This is a small gift from the Ross University Alumni Association, welcoming you to Ross University and also as a trainee medical professional. Now, I know you're very excited to find out what's in that box, but I would ask you to try and suppress your curiosity for the moment and wait to open it until after the ceremony is concluded. September semester 2017 will, I am sure, forever live in all of our individual and institutional memories. The injuries dealt to our campus and to the island of Dominica by Hurricane Maria will take time to heal, but heal they will. And there's evidence of that already. Any of you seen Dominica online? It's very green and lush already. And the campus and the people of Dominica are in the progress of rebuilding. I think the healing process is also symbolized by the way in which we have all come together, actually as a true community of scholars, faculty and staff, here in St. Kitts. And for that achievement alone, every member of the RUSM community deserves thanks and appreciation. And you, our students, faculty and staff, I think should give yourselves a big round of applause. So now it's a great pleasure for me to welcome our Dean and Chancellor, Dr. William F. Owen Jr., who will give some remarks and introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Owen.
Interesting they have a box for me to stand on. Feel really important. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, guys. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I was wondering, did we get you up too early this morning? Yeah, I have a feeling otherwise. I want to tell you, it is a real treat to be with everyone this morning. Faculty, administration, staff, our honored guests, students, families, friends, and especially the class of 2021. I want to thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to introduce you into our profession. As many of you have heard me say, this is the oldest profession in humanity, and this is a milestone moment for you. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. I'm honored, I'm grateful to welcome you into our profession, because this is what it's about this morning. It's a celebratory occasion. You're entitled to go out and yell and cheer. But I also want to remind you that this ceremony is embedded in solemnity and seriousness, because it's about your future status as societal icons, which you are soon to become. We talk about this in the context of putting on ceremonial garb of our profession, which is a white coat. It will be put on you by your teachers, by your mentors, and people who will soon be your peers. And think a little bit about what it represents as ceremonial garb. It's a white coat with deep pockets that you will store your stethoscope as you see your patients. It's a place where you will put a reminder note of something you need to do. For those who are my age, will remember an index card, and it may even be a place where you put a piece of candy or a small toy for a distressed child. This is going to be the first time that you publicly acknowledge in the presence of your family, your friends, the faculty, the staff, and the administration, your willingness to accept future responsibilities that are quite great. People talk of politicians and their obligations. Nothing compared to the obligations that you folks are about to assume. My perspective on the white coat ceremony is likely a little different than many of you, because I am old enough to remember a bit of the history of the white coat ceremony, which is truly probably a first modern ritual in medicine, and not just simply in American medicine, in global medicine. Every medical school in America has a white coat ceremony. Over 20 countries now, and it grows by about 2 to 3 per year, now have a white coat ceremony. The first one was not long ago, 1993, at Columbia University. My different perspective, which I want to share with you, is because I am of the AARP generation. You're laughing. Those free meals at Denny's on Thursdays is really pretty good. But let me use a bit of institutional memory to give you some perspective, because it does talk about what our expectations are of you as physicians. In 1983, a young Harvard professor, Paul Starr, wrote what was a landmark book in medicine titled The Social Transformation of American Medicine, won a Pulitzer Prize as well as a Bancroft Prize. It's a historical book that talks about the change in American medicine that occurred in the second half of the 20th century. It celebrated how medicine had evolved so that we had created our own professional and cultural authority. And you folks have experienced some of it. There was a dark side to it. The book was reviewed by the New York Times, and they said, quote, "American medicine has evolved so that it is overdosing with money and power." That's a quote. They talked about demagoguery in medicine. How did it occur? Well, first of all, the medical establishment in America and UK exploited what was an increasing belief that science was more important than compassion and humanism. Also, the profession began to very aggressively restrict admissions into medical school. I suspect some of you have experienced that firsthand. Collaborating with medical and state societies, the practice of medicine was modified through also similarly very restrictive licensing that influenced the scope of practice, what you could practice, even where you could practice. Quite honestly, my generation was evolving medicine into a profession of exclusionism. Medical school, when I trained, focused on biology rather than biography. Students were taught it was better to understand the malady. Don't waste your time on understanding the man or the woman with the malady. We taught that precision medicine based on the genetic code would trump the zip code where the patient was from. We adopted a caste system. The scientist happened to be on top, especially if he or she had an MD. The physician who was caring for the patient and shared decision-making was important, but certainly was not extolled to the same extent. Nurses and allied health professionals, your partners in caring for patients, were important, but they were subordinate. By the end of the 20th century, on self-reflection, we were not satisfied with our own behaviors as physicians. nor were we particularly satisfied with our newly minute physicians who had adopted those behaviors that we had taught them. I recall being on elevators and young physicians sharing jokes about patients and their maladies. We wore our biases about patients like coats on a cold day, comfortably. We frequently made errors in medicine. Oh, but mistakes happen. And interestingly, our young physicians were burning out, approaching the middle of their careers. Patients surveyed, interestingly and unsurprisingly, did not like their doctors. Many of them did not like themselves, and they certainly were disappointed with their choice of professions. But we needed to remind our young professionals that professionalism, ethics, and humanism were as important as the celebrated smarts of a good doctor. So a simple and clever approach to drive improvements in what was here as opposed to here was to state the expectations of our young physicians at the beginning of their career rather than at the end, which is the tradition in most professions. It is the charge at graduation. Perhaps give the charge at the beginning of the career. State what is expected. State what is valued. So you're going to see some of that today in terms of Dr. Andrew Crichton, who's going to share inspiring thoughts with you. So the white coat ceremony is not just a milestone celebration, folks. Rather, it is us giving you moral, ethical, and behavioral guidelines for what we expect your future careers to be like. When you mantle that coat today by Ross's most venerated physicians, it is a personally delivered gift from each of them to you. It's a public attestation by them of their faith, confidence, pride, and aspiration in you from one generation of physicians to another. I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about these special people who are helping you don white coats this morning, because they do deserve a good shout out. They're smart, they're passionate. They are people who take pride in being called a teacher rather than bristling at the term. They are people with wisdom. They're people with high expectations. They're people who define high performance and erudition based on how you do, not what they have discovered, what they have published, what awards they received. So I'd like to ask all of the faculty from Ross to please stand. Thank you. You may sit. They're going to inculcate values into you, and I think it's worthwhile to describe what I have experienced are the values that they expect to see in you, so that by the time you graduate, you're a walking paradigm of these. So first of all, they're going to teach you to value the maintenance of health just as much as how to treat a malady. They're going to teach you that the healthcare experience extends beyond that patient interaction in the hospital or in your office, but rather to the patient's home. They're going to make you proud to function as part of an interprofessional team with people who do not have a suffix MD. And lastly, they are going to teach you to continuously improve patient care. through simple approaches, like shutting up sometime and listening to the patient. There were Snickers around the candy. Yeah, the candy can be a therapeutic event. And lastly, a hug and sharing tears with your patient. We're trying to recreate a physician that existed over 100 years ago. I want to quote Sir William Osler for those who do not recognize the name. This is one of the founding fathers of Johns Hopkins University. And what did he say? Quote, "A doctor must know the man as much as he knows his disease." End quote. That's a nice message to say, shut up and listen. You don't know everything. Your patient does know everything. I noticed Dean White is looking at his wrist and posturing. To our faculty in neuroanatomy, I don't think he's acutely developed Tourette's syndrome. So Dean White, I will counter as chancellor with a short story, and that is I am reminded of how Churchill was sending a letter to Roosevelt updating him on one of the European theaters of battle during World War II. And I must quote him, Dean White, "Had I more time, I would have been more brief." So, in closing, I'd like to share a story. A man went to his doctor, and of course the doctor did what we all do. He examined him and he ordered a bunch of laboratory tests. The next day, the patient called as instructed to get the results. "Doctor, do you have my test results?" The physician responded, "Yes, Mr. Quinn, I do, but I have some bad news." Mr. Quinn responded, what is that?" The doctor said, "I have some bad news, and I have some really bad news." Mr. Quinn said, "Well, why don't we start with you telling me the bad news?" Mr. Quinn said, wow, what is it? Bad news? Doctor said, "You only have 24 hours to live, Mr. Quinn." Mr. Quinn squeaked, 24 hours? That's trouble. That's just terrible. What could be worse? What is the very bad news? The doctor said, "I've been trying to reach you since yesterday." Now, this off-color story has been circulating around the medical community for literally decades. Dr. Crichton probably certainly remembers that story. And it's gallows humor at its finest. My hope is that in passing the baton with your donning of a white coat today, that sort of gallows humor will disappear. People will not know that story. So in conclusion at Ross, I want to tell you that as the executive leader, we commit to providing you something of extraordinary value. We're going to give you a title, we're going to give you a societal rank, and most importantly, we're going to give you a name that has persisted in humanity, not for decades, not for millennia, but for human history. You folks will be called doctor. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you. Great universities like Ross are recognized by the quality of their alumni. And our keynote speaker for the white coat ceremony today is evidence of Ross University's greatness. I want to introduce you in a few words to Dr. K. Andrew Crichton, who is currently the Chief Medical Officer of Prudential Financial. For those of you who don't know Prudential, I guarantee you that it has impacted your life, either directly or indirectly. Prudential is a global, not just in the U.S., but a global Fortune 500 company that deals with financial services, investments, and insurance across the United States and 30 countries. It's got about 50,000 employees and assets of $800 billion. It manages over $1 trillion. It's one of the largest corporations in the world. Dr. Crichton, who you're about to meet, is responsible for the global health and safety programs. He provides leadership for medical clinics, their fitness programs, their employee assistance programs, work-life programs. He's the past chair of the Health Enhancement Research Organization. He's a former chair of the New Jersey Arthritis Foundation and restructured that organization so that it became a regional disease-focused powerhouse. He's a member of the American College of Physicians, the American College of Physician Executives, the American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, and the American Academy of Insurance Medicine. He's board certified in internal medicine and a certified physician executive. And most proudly, he's an alumnus of the class of '87. Dr. Crichton, please, if you could join us.
Okay, now I'm going to try it. Good morning. Good morning. See, I got him on the first time. Hey, man, you got juice. So, really, Dr. Owen and I did not coordinate our speeches at all. I'm going to reinforce some of the message that he had. But the thing he talked about, the white coat and the pocket and the index cards being old, index card. You didn't have to go that far, so. Now, I want to thank Dr. White, Dr. Owens, faculty and staff for inviting me to address you. That, again, we're finally here to have the white coat ceremony. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm an alumnus since in '87. I started the summer of '83 in Dominica. And I look through here and I look across here, and the vast majority of you weren't even born then, so I really feel old now. This was not good for my self-esteem, coming here and seeing how young they are. But I really want to congratulate the faculty and staff on being able to implement and get you here after the Hurricane Maria, because that is a tremendous undertaking, and it's amazing that they were able to do this. And I really want to acknowledge that. I'm in charge of the health emergency planning, pandemic planning worldwide for Prudential, so you can plan all you want, but to implement is utmost importance. And it looks like they were able to implement this successfully, so congratulations on that. Also, the students, I want to congratulate you on showing up and continuing with this, because again, you've overcome a challenge that was given to you. You'll find more challenges, but I think this one you'll be able to tell stories about over time. So that's important. And then the families for your support and friends, because without that, it's not easy to become a student from that. So thank you for all your support. Now, when I was here started in '83, we had no white coat ceremony. My parents never even made it to Dominica, although they wanted to. So I think it's great that you have this white coat ceremony. As I was traveling down, I was sitting by some parents along the way too, so it's great that you were able to make it here for this. So I'm going to tell you the answers to the test. The 3 things I want you to walk away from today is trust, listen and observe, and then the 3rd thing is teach, not tell. So just remember those and you'll pass the test then. Because again, as Dr. Owens said, it's the humanity part of it that was missing from medicine and needs to be reinserted. And my bias is technology, the computerized medical record and all that is another tool that's great, but don't let it interrupt your relationship with the patient. So as I said, my background, 83, graduated in 87. The nice thing about my time at RUSM in Dominica was the friendship. So again, we had about 80 people in our class. You're much bigger than that. But we knew each other and we supported each other because it was difficult. Trying to study, doing all this, although you didn't have the distractions, we had no internet. I'd write my wife an airmail, a letter back and forth. And so, yeah, it was, there was no distractions from that standpoint. But the friendship that we had and the support and then the rotation. So back then, we were just talking at dinner last night, is we were responsible for our own clinical rotations and getting those. So, a bunch of us were in Chicago for a while, then I went to New York to do psychiatry. Perfect place for psychiatry is New York. Hopefully not many people are from New York. But then went to the UK to do OBGYN and peds, and it was a wonderful experience. I got to do 30 deliveries with a nurse midwife and repair episiotomy. So I got hands-on experience as well as then the book knowledge too, which was important. And the nice thing was you got to know the patient. I actually got a book from a patient that I delivered their baby that was from the UK. And so it was like making those personal relationships was really important. I did my internal medicine in St. Louis. I'm originally from Missouri, and then went back to practice for about 2.5 years in internal medicine. But then through a connection, went to Sigma Chemical in St. Louis and became a corporate medical director. So went to the dark side on the corporation side of it all. But again, keeping that clinical practice. So it's important to have that clinical background and that knowledge of the medical system. It's important for you to do that. Then I've been at 18 years at Prudential, so they haven't caught up with me yet, so that's pretty good. What I will tell you is, whatever you think you're going to be doing in 20 or 30 years, you're probably wrong. Your career path is not going to be a straight line. Mine was so jagged, and many things came up, but I took the opportunity, like you took the opportunity to come to Ross, to then come back here after the hurricane, and do this, so you're already showing that resilience and that flexibility to move forward and take advantage of opportunities that come to you. So now let's get down to the test. Trust. Your patients and your colleagues will trust that you have the knowledge and skills which you're developing right now. That's a given. That's a baseline that you have. But the other thing from a trust is you have to know your patient's best interest, and as Dr. Owens said, the humanity part of it. You need to know your patient. You need to know what motivates them. Many times someone will have the same disease and be completely disabled versus somebody else with the same disease and functioning fully. What's the difference there? It's something with that, that individual patient. And so you need to know your patients, what their wants, what their likes, what their support system is. The social determinants of health are big. So the zip code, as Dr. Owens mentioned, is a big determinant of health, more than just your genetic code right now. So understand what your patient, understand their needs, their social structure, their support, because that will make them and make you more successful. As I said, don't let the technology get between you and the patient. So we just went through an audit at Prudential we have 9 on-site clinics. And as the doctor who I know, he was at Lockheed Martin and now he's consulting, came in and he goes, well, the best practice is for your nurses to be documenting as they're talking to the patient. And I said, no. I go, what you're saying is that's what a lot of people do. That's not best practice. Best practice is paying attention to the patient and then documenting later. So I go, I do disagree with that one. And don't let that happen. If you look at the electronic medical record, it's great. I mean, I loved having the old paper record and standing at the bedside and flipping through while you're talking to them. And you go back to mistakes. So you talk about mistakes in medicine. You go back to the Ebola case in Dallas. The nurse taking the intake got the travel history from Western Africa in regards to the index Ebola patient in Dallas. The doctor never got to that part of the electronic medical record and read it. So there was a disconnect in there. And so that knowledge transfer didn't happen, and therefore the thought process about Ebola didn't happen. And so we had that outbreak in Dallas. Don't let that happen to you. Mistakes do happen. They've happened to me too. And a lot of times was when I short-circuited the process. So learn the process. You want to know, we were talking last night, I remember when I was going through training of, the head-to-toe exam, it's like, well, they're having a cardiac problem. Why am I doing all this stuff? It's to get into the habit of it, because you're not going to need it all the time, but you have to have that knowledge base to know when you need to do that full neuro exam, even though it's a cardiac problem right now. So yes, it's annoying to write out a whole history and physical. I say write out, you probably don't even do that anymore. But to do a whole history and physical and all the detail, it's important that you get this pattern in your work practices. But when you make a mistake, recover quickly and get back on the road and learn the lesson. Had a speaker one time, just last year. She was a Paralympic skier that said, they were competing, it was icy, all the participants fell in this one section with ice. The one who was the winner, she was second place, the one who was the winner was the one who got up the quickest. So remember that. If you make a mistake, get up quickly, but learn from that mistake. So that's the trust part. Listen and observe. When you talk about listening and observing, your patient, as Dr. Owen said, is that we did not communicate about what we were talking about, but your patient will let you know what's going on. They'll tell you what's wrong. They may come in with a chief complaint, but it may not be exactly what they're doing. You have to take time, ask the probing questions, and see what's wrong. I'll give you an example from my life. When I was doing occupational medicine, I had a person sent to me with 9 months of back pain. They were a truck driver. The company sent them to me. Was going through physical therapy, not getting better at all. I started talking to the person. They did a flatbed truck, and they would tarp this whole truck. So I'd ask them, so when would the back pain start? And they go, when I was tarping the truck. Okay. When would it go away? Well, when I'd sit down. And I started thinking, okay, well, how long? And he goes, oh, just a few minutes of sitting down. I go, that makes no sense at all. So I asked again, got the same answers. And it finally clicked, and I go, how about walking up a hill? Oh, I can't walk up a hill. Why? Well, my back hurts. So I said, lay down, went right for the femoral pulses. He had no femoral pulses at all. He had aortic stenosis. So everybody was focused on the back and the spine, and it was aortic stenosis giving him the back pain. Sent him immediately to the vascular surgeon, and then he calls and goes, oh yeah, this guy finally realized, he goes, his sister had the same thing too. So you have to ask the right questions to get the right answer, and so it's probing and asking. And when things don't make sense, go back to the beginning again. And observe. So observe your patient, especially if there's interactions with other family members there, observe how they interact. Then you'll know the support system, what's going on. If a family member is always answering the questions, well, then is there a cognitive, ability problem with that patient? So interact, listen, and observe what's going on with them. And then ask some simple questions. I mean, my daughter, when we were in St. Louis, had asthma and was getting treatment, but on oral steroids for 3 months straight. And so we went to Mayo Clinic, and the first question that the doctor at Mayo Clinic said, so while you're here this week, we plan to be there a whole week, what do you want out of this visit? And it's like, no, it wasn't like, what's the problem? What are they doing? It's like, what do you want out of this visit? And we said, we don't want her to miss 40 days of school like she did last year. He goes, okay, that'll be the goal. So know your patient, ask the right questions, ask what they do now or can't do now that they've done in the past or they want to do. As Dr. Owen said, I just retired from the board for the Arthritis Foundation, and that was one thing in this past meeting. An RA patient said, I was okay with not doing things, but my husband said, you know what, when they were with the doctor, she used to run all the time, she can't run now. And that was, she was okay with it, she kind of accepted it, but her husband was the one who stepped up and said, no, we can do better too. So ask your patient what they want out of this. So that's listen and observe, and then last is teach, not tell. Again, from this standpoint, the patient must understand everything that you're doing to them, with them, and for them, so they can be compliant. And you're going to be judged on how well your patient does from a quality perspective. So take the time that your patient can understand. A lot of our nurses and our doctors within Prudential have people coming back and asking, well, my doctor said this, what does it mean? And we'll go into more detail and tell them, but it's not always happening in the medical system. Also, this teach, not tell is the basis of leadership. So we want to develop people that can do things on their own. So Johns Hopkins actually developed a leadership program on teach, not tell. Dr. Owen, I was talking about this last night, and he goes, oh, so for healthcare leaders? And I go, no, business leaders. They're taking this teach, not tell, and going to business leaders. So we did it within Prudential, in how to get the best out of your employees, make sure that they're successful, because if they're successful, you're successful. So we need to think this over, and as we make people with us and under us better, it elevates our role too, and makes you more successful. And as you go through training, you're going to experience good teachers and bad teachers. Learn from both. Learn how not to be a bad teacher, but sometimes they do have some things that come along. But emulate those good teachers and how it made you feel and the rest of the team feel when they were doing their job well, and become a good teacher as it goes along, because it'll benefit your patients, your colleagues, and the team altogether. So again, 3 things: trust, listen and observe, and teach, not tell. You're embarking on a great career, and even though this is my uniform right now, not the white coat, but you can do a lot of things. There are a lot of opportunities with that MD degree beyond clinical medicine. I know a number of my colleagues that, between Goldman Sachs, Kimberly-Clark, there's just companies galore. Disney has a chief medical officer, so there's a lot of opportunities from that standpoint, from an academic, from a clinical, but even from a business perspective that opens the door for you. We had a Ross grad with us at Prudential. He left and went to Optum too in Minnesota, but I'm amazed at how many Ross grads I come across. My in-laws, we moved from Missouri to New Jersey, got them with a Ross grad, that internist, because, and again, when we had to go to a cardiologist, they spoke so highly of Dr. Dabrowski and his knowledge and the way he treated patients, because he would listen to them. He was, and we'll call it old school, but it's the right school of understanding the patient and being there for them. So, congratulations. You're on a good road right now. You've had already a big challenge ahead of you, and you successfully completed that one. But take this opportunity to learn that skill and knowledge, but don't forget about the humanity of your patient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Owen and Dr. Crichton, for your inspiring words of wisdom for our new students. So now we will commence the very important and exciting activity of putting on a white coat. Now, the way this is going to work is logistically very simple. At the appropriate time, some ushers will usher you from your row into the center aisle, and then you'll proceed down the center aisle and either to my right or to my left until you get to the end and meet a faculty member who will assist you in donning your white coat. Just obey the instructions of the ushers and all will be well. So ushers, please lead us in the donning. Thank you very much. but I don't blame all of you for your obvious excitement at this moment. And so I'd just like to say congratulations, class of 2021. Good luck and all success as you proceed with your medical education. And I was going to say, give yourselves a round of applause because you all look great, but you foresaw that. You see, you remember the cell volume session back in Dominicana. So, but I would like to invite you all to give yourself a second round of applause. Why not? At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Ricardo Hood, Associate Professor and Vice Chair of the Department of Clinical Medicine, who will provide us with an introduction and the expectations of a medical professional through the white coat. Is that correct?
Good morning. So, part of being a physician is being prepared for the unexpected. I believe this semester has been constantly attempting to be prepared for the unexpected. Maria is still spinning today. Nonetheless, you now received your white coats. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means, what it can do for you, what the journey is. Because all of you now are going to be transformed from those unusual, unordinary people you were prior to coming to medical school to being the extraordinary people you will be required to be the good physician. Thomas Eakin. Two images of the past. The Gross Clinic in 1875. Dark. Everyone wore black. What we learned between then and 1889 was that germs tend to hide in darkness. So let's put on white. And thus it's been white for physicians since then. What does it mean? All of you look like this today. Some with ties, some without. A symbol of the white coat. It brings you status. From here on, it's part of your work clothes until you go to the other dark side. You will all become heroes. It's a journey, and today marks a milestone in that journey. If this was week 2 of semester 1, then it probably would, I could say it's the beginning. But it's still a milestone in that journey. It's your commitment to being in medicine and our commitment as your teachers to helping you progress to the point of where you will have that MD degree and you will be prepared for residency. Because it doesn't stop in the medical school. What does that journey look like? Well, you got a call. Each of you got a call that says, I want you to be a physician. I don't know if you know who the call came from. I certainly don't know who my call came from. But you get the call, you answer the call, you enroll in medical school. And it keeps going. So you're somewhere here. So you have to recognize that adventure is possible. Anything can happen. Sometimes it has a name, Maria. If I'm trying to make light of this too much, I apologize. This is certainly a solemn ceremony. But in the solemnness, we have to maintain our ability to laugh and be happy. And so at some point you get to this thing called the pit. The GNV excellent is not. I want to be clear on that. Let's be clear. On this journey that we're on, we're going to have times, you're going to have times, we have all had those times, when you're going to want to think, I don't want to do this. Is it worth it? What was I thinking about? Who did that call come from? Let me block their number. You're going to be angry with everyone, anyone, someone, just because they're one. But you have to get beyond that. And then it starts rising. But you still say, is it worth it? This is not a short journey until you're looking backwards. Most of us who finished medical school, when we look back on those 4 years, they were only 4 years. But when we were looking forward, we thought it was a lifetime. So we keep moving. I encourage you to keep moving forward every day. And some of you have heard me say this. What you need to do now is every day learn something. That no day should pass where you didn't learn something. And with that, you get here. The breakthrough. The transformation. You're now recognizing that you're no longer that person that showed up on day one of medical school, or even the third week of medical school, which was 7 weeks after day one. You're feeling comfortable with yourself. You're knowing you don't know everything, but you're remembering to bring everything that you know. And then eventually you return home with the gift of being extraordinary, the gift of being the physician, the gift that says, I now understand that the people are more important than their disease. That in order to treat the disease, I must treat the whole person. That disease doesn't exist without people. Those are the things that we hope you'll get from this journey of being the hero. But before then, we got to get there. So it's going to be a cloak of compassion, garment of trust. You're going to use it to keep yourself warm in a few months. You're going to use it to make you sweat in the next few days. It's a tear catcher. It's a pillow, a blanket, a sauna. It's a laundry indicator, meaning when you see the edges start turning brown, you know you need to wash it. It's a hair shirt. Self-imposed punishment, suffering, sacrifice, penance. We've talked about the dark side a little bit, but also you need to recognize, and you will become where you can recognize when your white coat is a detriment to your relationship with your patient. That sometimes you leave your white coat off when you walk in the room because you know the reaction you get is going to be one where I'm fearful. Dr. Owen talked about the piece of candy as a comfort, especially for the child that's crying. Sometimes simply taking off the white coat before you walk in the room, the kid will then see you as a person, not as this needle stick. Placebo, nocebo, all of those things are part of your white coat. Dr. Arthur Townsend. The good physician does all the good he can do to all the people he can in all the ways he can. "24/7. From this day forward, everything you do, every time you do it, is reflective of you being the physician. Everything you do, every time you do it, is reflective of you being the physician. So you decide now what you want to be in terms of that good physician image, if that's what you want to be, or if you want to not be the good physician image, then that's what it will be. You decide, but it's a 24/7 commitment. You can take off the white coat, but I never stopped being Dr. Hood. Not Dr. Hood the physician, not Dr. Hood the teacher. It never stops. So at this point, today marks the first hour of that 24/7 commitment. I expect those things from you, that you will keep that commitment. Pulitzer Prize-winning author, Anna Quinlan. By virtue of choosing the profession, we as the patients, expect you to be better than the rest of us. That goes back to that 24/7 commitment. Patients don't have to be better than you, doctor. You have to be better than your patient. And for those of you who have already found it to be hard, it's supposed to be. If it wasn't hard, anyone would do it. There would be nothing special. There would be nothing transformative about being a physician and going to medical school. The hard is indeed what makes it great. And with that, I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hood, for that absorbing perspective. It's now a real pleasure to invite another RUSM alumnus to the podium. Dr. Eric Nielsen is an assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Medicine, and he is going to lead you, as well as any other MDs in the room, to reattest in the reading of the Hippocratic Oath. Dr. Nielsen.
Good morning, everybody. Feels like the afternoon probably already. Welcome, distinguished guests, family, friends, most importantly, students. I just want to say real quick how proud we are of you, how proud your families are, I know, of you, and how proud I hope you all are of yourselves. on this, very special day. You keep this same passion, resilience, and that short white coat is going to turn into a long white coat before you know it. Everyone has the oath on their program if you need to read along. I do solemnly swear that I hold most sacred that I will be loyal to the profession of medicine and just as generous to its members, that I will lead my life and practice my art in uprightness and honor, that into whatsoever house I shall enter, it shall be for the good, sick, and the utmost of my power, in holding myself aloof from wrong, from the temptation of others to vice, that I will exercise my art solely for the care of my patients and will give no drug, perform no operation for a criminal purpose, even if solicited, far less suggested, that whatsoever I shall see or hear of the lives of people which is not fitting to be spoken, I will keep inviolably secret. These things I do promise, and in proportion am faithful to this my oath. May happiness and good repute be ever mine, the opposite if I shall be forsworn. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Nielsen. And as Dr. Crichton said, you never know where you're going to be in 5 or 10 years, and I'm sure that Dr. Nielsen is no exception to that rule. So as we draw to a close now, I would like Dr. Brian Hayes, our Associate Dean for Student Affairs, just to come and present a gift to our keynote speaker, Dr. Crichton. We hope, Dr. Crichton, that it will remind you of your time in Dominica. And if you're lucky, you may meet the author of that book. He's in the audience somewhere. So finally, I'd like to thank all of our presenters, guests, faculty, staff, and upper semester students who have assisted with this very special ceremony, and especially our new students for a very successful and I hope inspiring and motivating white coat ceremony. So thank you all again for your attendance today. It's a very special day in the history of RUSM. So I'd ask you to all remain seated while we allow our guests and dignitaries to proceed out of the hall, and then follow them as guided by the ushers to our drinks reception, which is outside, our non-alcoholic drinks reception. It's 9:15, it's too... I do thank you all once again, and do enjoy the rest of your day with your families. Thank you. Are those your spectacles?